More interestingly, 40% of people who were polled who said they voted Reform UK at the last general election view this as a sleazy move.
This is what happens when a political talking point completely falls apart under pressure. Reform UK supporters tried to dismiss yet another Nigel Farage controversy as nothing more than an establishment hit job. But when one of their own was forced to defend that argument, the entire narrative started to unravel. Before we begin, comment where you're watching from, like this video, and subscribe so you don't miss our next report. Let's get straight into it.
Where does legitimate criticism of your political opponent stop and a smear campaign or an establishment hit job start? Because, yeah, it's not rocket science. If you're in a different political party to someone, you're going to criticise them, you're going to try and pounce on every negative story, trying to bring them down, etc. Is that what the mainstream parties are currently doing with Reform, or is it a kind of organised smear campaign, Ellie?
Well, I think it is organised because they're all coming together in order to stop Nigel Farage. And I think that we will see during this by-election some extremely dirty tactics being used. And I think the allegation from Richard Tice that the National Crime Agency have leaked his bank statements and his conversations with his bank to The Guardian, I think is absolutely disgusting. And that's what I mean by dirty tactics. And I think we'll see much more of that. We saw Sky News turning up at Nigel Farage's daughter's house. I mean, these kind of things that I don't think are happening to other politicians, but are happening to Nigel Farage because the
other politicians get doorsteps.
But the establishment see him as fair game, I think it's fair to say.
So, that's the familiar Reform UK playbook whenever Nigel Farage comes under pressure. Blame the establishment, claim dirty tactics, and portray every investigation as a political attack. But this time, that defense doesn't land. Ellie Hodges tries to sell the same argument, only to run into fellow right-wing commentator Peter Barnes, who isn't willing to let the excuses slide. Instead, he calmly takes the victim narrative apart, forcing the conversation in a very different direction.
I don't think it was a mistake, because I think that if Nigel didn't do this, he would regret it. And I think that a lot of the time we can, and I completely understand why, a lot of the time we criticise Nigel Farage for a certain decision he makes, and then later down the line, everyone realises why he's done it. And this might be the odd one out where he has actually made a mistake and this is the wrong thing to do, and this damages his whole entire political career. We don't know. But usually when Nigel Farage makes a decision, we usually see why much later down the line.
Well, that's a really interesting point. So, Peter, you are an articulate sceptic about the Reform project.
Kindly.
You don't hate Nigel Farage.
No.
You don't hate Reform. You agree with a chunk of their ideas. You're a bit worried about execution and potential delivery in office. What do you make of this move by Nigel?
Well, I've been calling it Carry On Clacton. It's somewhat of a carry-on farce at the moment, I'm afraid, because, yes, Nigel did not think this through, because the damage has already been done, because this is not about... this is not about the people of Clacton, realistically. Voters don't get to audit bank transfers. That's not how it works. You also don't get to sponsor an election, or, you know, what I've been calling the Nigel Farage Vanity Project, which this by-election is, by offering to pay for it. That's not how this works either. The damage has been done already, because when you look at the public perception of Nigel Farage and of Reform UK, I'm looking at the figures now from YouGov released last night, 73% view Nigel Farage as sleazy, 69% now view Nigel Farage Reform UK as sleazy. More interestingly, 40% of people who were polled who said they voted Reform UK at the last general election view this as a sleazy move. This is starting to crack. And realistically, that is what I find... I have to admit, yes, Ellie, I agree, that last figure is interesting, but it's about principle. And when Nigel Farage got a bang on the door saying, by the way, can you provide some receipts? He decided to not just run away, but he's running in a circle because the investigation doesn't stop into these the £5 million and all the rest of it. It actually just pauses. So if he wins, he just comes back, and the paperwork is literally still sat on his desk asking for these answers that he could just have given weeks and months ago. The investigation was opened on the 13th of May. We're now into July. He could have fixed this at any point. The question you have to ask is, what is the operational void at the heart of Reform UK, where everybody has been saying the establishment is going to come, the blob is going to attack? Where was the firewall? Where was the protection for Robert Jenrick? Where's the protection for Nigel Farage and Richard Tice? This should have been knock on the front door, and they could have weaponised it and used it against the establishment and used it against the media and the press, and it embarrassed people for saying, how dare you ask us about donations? Don't ask us. Here's the paperwork. Go ask them where their money came from. That is what a smart political operation should have done.
And just like that, the entire defense falls apart. Remember, Peter Barnes isn't a Reform UK opponent. He's broadly on their side. Yet even he isn't buying the excuse. He argues that if Reform really wanted to expose the establishment, they could have simply handed over the paperwork and ended the story. Instead, the pressure only grows. And as you'll see next, Ellie Hodges suddenly abandons her confident defense and begins to backtrack.
Ellie, it's unfortunately clock against us, but I want you to give me a substantial answer. Do you want to push back on that?
Well, I mean, there's a hell of a lot to unpack there, Peter. I mean, that was a lot to say. I mean, the point that
Give him hell!
The point that I do agree with is that the £5 million donation isn't going away anytime soon, because when we think about when this was first announced, I think it was at the end of April. That's a long time for something to still be sticking in politics. And I've spoke to people that don't really care about politics. They're not really that interested, and they know about this £5 million donation. So I think that I agree with you on that point. However, I think the reason that Nigel's called this election is because he's not because this is a vanity project for him. He's actually saying, no, I'm letting the people of Clacton decide my future. He's putting himself at risk in some way and making a gamble that...
And there you have it. It's easy to dismiss every investigation as an establishment smear when nobody pushes back. But the moment the arguments are tested with facts, the confidence quickly disappears. Even Peter Barnes, someone broadly sympathetic to Reform UK, wasn't convinced by the defense. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss our latest political coverage.